Hello everyone, my name is Kelsey Egan and I am the director and co-writer of the post-apocalyptic dystopian fairy tale Glass House, which is coming out in South Africa on box office on the 1st of October, and very excited to be appearing and taking part in Ryan Kruger's incredible festival, South African Independent Film Festival in Cape Town. And we are on Showmax from next year. So plenty of opportunity to see the film. Love you to check it out, hear your thoughts. Feel free to message, tell me what you think. And in terms of talking about how I got into film and how I got here and got the opportunity to make this film, it's been a very, very long road. So I will try to keep this concise, but I'm going to start from the beginning because I think everyone's path into the industry and own journey in forging ahead or forcing your way in to fight for the opportunities to do what you really want to do in this industry is unique and also an immense challenge. But happy to share a little bit about how I did it. It's not necessarily the right way. I don't think there's any right way. You find what works for you. But this is the path that I happen to take, and I learned so much along the way, and I will do my best to share some of those lessons to save you a little pain so you can skip some of the learning curves that I went through. So I'm a dual citizen of South Africa and the United States. I went to college at Vassar in upstate New York. And at that time, I didn't know I was going to do film. I was heavily involved in theater as an actress and then a director, and I absolutely loved it. But film seemed like this distant dream, like it was inaccessible. Like there was no way I would ever manage to work in film. It just seemed like a pipe dream in a way. And I studied neuroscience and behavior with a double major in theater and did a lot of directing in college, and again, loved it and was aware of the film department, but it actually didn't even occur to me that I could study film because I just didn't think I would have any chance of getting involved in this industry. But while I was in college, I learned that as much as I love neuroscience and behavior and it was fascinating to study, that I was happiest and most fulfilled and that my personal calling was working with talented people and collaborating to create something greater than the sum of its parts. I think it's such a gift to be able to create a platform to bring everyone together and create something as a team. And I was so filled and loved those experiences that I had directing plays so much that I realized that pursuing neuroscience and behavior probably wasn't what I was going to do as an adult, that my personality was better suited to creative collaboration with others. So I made the very scary decision to pursue the arts for a career. And in my final year of school, I got cast in an independent film in New York. So I went down to Manhattan and I was shooting in the city, and I was great friends with the producers and just spent this incredible couple of days working with them. And my mind was just blown. And what I realized that I loved about film was the fusion of so many different disciplines to achieve this unified vision. And I mean, theater, I'd always really loved the challenge of, a black box space. You have very limited resources and you have to create this world from scratch, from nothing. And as a creative exercise and from a performance point of view, what I learned from theater was invaluable, particularly like as an actress and working with other actors, different tactics for performance, different ways to approach different roles, different types of method for approaching performances. But what I was blown away with working on the independent film was that, like, it slowly dawned on me that when the apocalypse really comes, I mean, maybe it's here, for all we know at this rate, the way the last 2 years have gone, but it was film people, I realized, film crews, who would survive the apocalypse, not necessarily the theater crowd. That's no offense to theater people. Obviously, Broadway productions are massive and a similar level of organization and incredibly impressive. But I found with film the fusion of, electrics from grips to transport, to art department, the artisanal skill and craftsmanship across the board in all of these different departments, camera, are such unique skill sets, and everyone comes together and just creates a flippin' miracle. And that just, I was blown away by that. I was blown away by the level of collaboration, the amount of communication to get all of those moving pieces right. And that challenge, like the second I was exposed to it, I was completely addicted. So I graduated from college after this film experience and was like totally into film. But at that point, I'd recognized that I wasn't going to pursue neuroscience and behavior, and I wanted to have one last opportunity to have that experience to say goodbye to what I thought I wanted to do. So I had saved up money all through my last year of school, working a side job, and I came to South Africa and worked on a game reserve. And I had an incredible time, and I learned so much, and I was out in the bush, and it was an amazing experience. But during that time, I completely fell in love with the country here. I was amazed by the land. I was very impressed by the people. And I realized that the United States had a lot to learn from South Africa in terms of we have a lot of parallels in our history. And South Africa has dealt with a lot of really difficult, challenging obstacles in ways that I found quite impressive and admirable. The US, when I was growing up, was so PC that certain things were swept under the rug and not discussed. And with, for example, hashtag Black Lives Matter is the first time in a very, very long time that really real issues in the United States have been openly addressed. When I was a kid, it was like, oh no, everything's fine. There's no such thing as prejudice or racism or sexism. And it's like, that's all bullshit. Those are major problems. They very much exist. But it was sort of like this glossy facade in the 80s and 90s where everyone just was ostrich head in the sand. And when I came here, I was so impressed that everyone had a much more open, easy dialogue about the very real obstacles that this country has faced and the trauma that has resulted from that. That's still with everyone in a really concerted effort to move on from it. And I thought that open communication was just incredibly, just so insanely valuable and was something the US could really learn from. So I realized that as a writer, as a creator, in New York, I was in my own bubble. I was with people who were very much like me, who'd grown up in the same way that I had, and that if I stayed in that bubble, I wouldn't necessarily be the type of filmmaker or creative that I wanted to be. I wanted to know what it felt like to be a fish out of water, to not be in a majority in a situation, to be in a place that was not necessarily everything that I knew, and learn from that, to know what that felt like. So after my first experience in South Africa, I spent about 6 months here working on this game reserve and then backpacking around and meeting tons of people and just being more and more impressed and falling more and more in love with this country. I ran out of money because I was in my early 20s. I went back to the States. I was very bleak because I really wanted to stay here and continue growing and continue this challenging journey. And at that time, I'd figured out how exciting the film industry was here. But again, I was out of money. I didn't have a work visa or anything. So I went back to the US. And from there, I got the opportunity through friends, through sort of mutual friends, no, actually, I'm getting this wrong. I answered a Craigslist ad. So in the US, Craigslist is like Gumtree. I was flat broke, and I was working like 6 different jobs, living at my mom's house in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, bleak as all fuck. And because I'd just come back from South Africa, and it was like dead of winter and super depressing, and I was just working any odd job that I could find to save up money as fast as I could. And I answered a Craigslist ad to work as a PA for a Tisch NYU student film shooting in my hometown, which was like by far the most interesting Craigslist ad that existed in Milwaukee at that time. So I went and they hired me as a PA. It wasn't paid, I don't think. I think I was just so excited to get back on set and back doing something creative. And I became really good friends. I hit it off with the producer and the director, and they ended up then asking me to first AD another short that was getting shot in Philadelphia in a couple months' time. And I ended up just flying to New York, no money, like one duffel bag of clothes, and going to Philadelphia and first ADing this short, and became great friends with everyone. And then instead of going back to Milwaukee, went up to New York and was couch surfing and staying with friends who were living in Brooklyn and Manhattan, and worked on every set I could. These weren't opportunities that were given to me. I literally talked my way onto sets like I Am Legend, and various others. Like I remember being on a set with Ewan McGregor and Michelle Williams, and I don't even remember what the film was called. I think The Tourist, dead of winter. And you just like talked your way into these jobs. Like I figured out set etiquette, and I figured out, and I'd offered to volunteer at all these production companies for free just to get into the door. And from there figured out, like from word of mouth, figured out who was shooting what and when, and sort of got into the PA network in Manhattan. It was such a hustle. It was super difficult. It was super challenging. And then I just kind of figured out how to find out who the ADs were on set, and then very, very nicely approach them and ask for an opportunity to show that I could be an asset as a PA or a third AD or whatnot. And it worked. And I froze because I still only had this duffel bag of clothes, and I didn't have any clothes for winter. And I'd come to New York in the summer, and by that point it was like coming into winter, and I had like nothing. But it was all worth it, and I was having the time of my life and just learning so much, like thrown into the deep end constantly. First AD'd another short, and then was working at one of these production offices on the floor, and I taught myself how to use Movie Magic, budgeting, and scheduling, EP. And if you don't know those programs and aren't familiar with them, I would highly encourage you to beg, borrow, and steal your way to get access to the software. It is expensive. I will not go into any further details, but trust me, you can make a plan to get a hold of it and teach it to yourself. It is not difficult. It is easier than Excel. And I taught myself how to schedule. I taught myself how to budget from scratch, basically grabbing professional feature film budgets, again, just getting hold of them and learning how they inputted everything, familiarizing myself with rates and deals and different methods of scheduling from first ADing these shorts. Didn't go to film school. None of this stuff was taught. I was figuring it out as I went along. And I mean, really in this industry, there's no better way than being on set, getting the set experience and learning. And if you really want it bad enough and you show that you're keen and you come with a smile and you make everyone's life around you easier, all of the guys have been doing it for years who are top departments, that means something to them, that passion and seeing that keenness and the willingness to say yes, even though it's shit. And trust me, I got all the shit jobs. Like there was once it was like getting into dead of winter. Again, I didn't have proper clothing, and I was sent to lock up. We were shooting in just below Houston Street in Manhattan, and it is a fucking wind tunnel when the weather is shitty. And I got sent to lock that up because we were shooting a night scene down one side street. And I think they forgot about me. I was standing in the cold without a proper jacket for like 2 hours. I thought I was gonna die. But you just do it, because the doors that open by showing that you're willing to make everyone else's lives easier is really well received. Everyone pays their dues in this industry, and that's really, really important. And the payoff of that, of the opportunities you get from that, are priceless. And by that point, everyone was so grateful that I was willing to do these really shitty jobs without complaining that, like, I remember sound department gave me a jacket, like no one wants you to die. And it was really my fault for being unprepared, right? But in any case, so I was doing all these PA jobs, and I was teaching, while first ADing low budget short films, right? So I was like working for massive studio shoots as a PA, getting paid, and then doing these and first ADing short films for free just to learn. And I was sitting on the floor working on a schedule, and some producer at one of the production offices just walked by and kind of did a double take. Why is this 23-year-old, 22-year-old working in EP scheduling? And the next day, he hired me as his assistant and took me with him to Beijing to shoot a movie, because he was so impressed that I taught myself that software at that age and got a hold of it. And I think the biggest takeaway there was, and I think like this is the whole message I'm trying to get across with even this talk, no one will give you opportunities. You have to fight for them every step of the way. But if you show that you're willing to give all of yourself and there to learn and hungry, the response you get from seniors and HODs and people who've been through the ringer, that's what they want to see. That's what they're looking for. Because if they take the time to invest in you, if they take a couple of weeks or months to train you up, and it's an investment on their side, it's not easy. Like if I'm looking at taking on an assistant or working with someone who's more junior, I know that's a fair amount of time that I'm investing to make sure that they're ready, that on set there will be an asset and I won't have to lose time explaining something or whatnot. And I'm totally open to questions. Like, there's no such thing as a bad question, but there's a time and a place. And if they see that you're in it for the long run and that you're not gonna bail when the going gets tough, or that you're not really, really serious about pursuing this, they will take the time to invest in you because they'll know you'll be around. And that's what they're looking for. So I think that's the biggest lesson I learned, like starting out, is that's how to get your foot in the door. And then the other big takeaway from my own journey is no one's ever going to hand you an opportunity on a silver platter. So the faster you figure out what department you want to work in and what you want to pursue and what you want your specialty to be, the better. And then you have to pursue that single-mindedly for all you're worth. I knew I wanted to be a director. I directed my first short film, Gargoyle, in 2008. It was a 26 minutes. It was nominated for a SAFTA for Best Short Film. That was in 2008. It took till now, 2020, for me to get the opportunity to direct a feature. And trust me, I tried this entire time. Every year I was fighting. And there are just so many reasons in this industry to say no to someone with no experience that you have to make it as easy as possible for everyone to say yes. So what was I doing from 2008 to 2020? Well, I figured out pretty quick that no one was ever going to hire me as a director. I had to make my own opportunities. So I would work a big job. So I'd work and I've done it all. I've worked as a VFX producer. I've worked as an AD. I've worked in continuity. I was assistant continuity on District 9. I've worked as a screenwriter. I was one of the writers on Trackers and various other television shows. Always writing spec scripts every step of the way for free to show that I had the skill set. I had to write spec scripts for years before I got my first professional writing job. I've worked as a as a stunt performer. Never thought that would happen. Started training with the stunties to get better as an action director. And then to my absolute shock, trust me, no one was more surprised than me, I managed getting cast on the stunt team of Mad Max Fury Road. Worked my ass off, trained for months, again, with no guarantee of like being officially on the job. And all of these experiences were invaluable because they broadened my scope as a director. They helped me understand the needs of every department better. They helped me see where, departments and communication is key, and where you can run into trouble if you don't have proper communication at which stage in the pre-production process. So I worked all of these different jobs in different departments, and it certainly looks like, if you look at my CV, it looks a little ADD, but the reason for that is because I knew I wanted to be a director, and I was single-mindedly pursuing that, and the best way I could make myself the best director I could be was understanding where every other department was coming from and what their needs were and how best to facilitate them to get them what they need to fulfill the overall vision as timely as possible. And really directing in so many ways is just facilitating and communicating and making sure that your incredibly talented team has what they need from you to maximize what they can bring. So just going back to, general takeaways in terms of how to get where you want to go, it's that single-minded focus of pursuing every opportunity. And the biggest challenge you'll run into is, how do I make a living while doing this? And it's not easy. Like, please know, like, if you're taking this on and you want to do it and you really, really want this, think smart from the get-go of recognizing that this is a long-term commitment and you are going to have to put in easily a decade, maybe longer, to get where you want to go. I think pretty much every director I know has put that work in behind the scenes, and then all of a sudden the movie comes out and it's like this splash success and there's all this press and it looks so rosy. But it's like you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg of the pain and the poverty and desperation that has come before to get to that opportunity. But the way that I personally did it was that I would work a big job. So I'd work on one of the big international service jobs, like say the Dark Tower or Maze Runner, or The Giver, and save up money on one of those jobs, because we all know that when you're on set working like 16-hour days, 6 days a week, you're not going out, you're not spending that money. So I'd save up a chunk of change. And then the moment that job wrapped, I would take 3 or 4 months and I'd self-produce one of my own projects to direct. And usually, because I couldn't afford to pay anyone, I would produce it myself, because I couldn't ask someone to work for free for the amount of time it took. And I'd put it all together, and the people that I'd become friends with or close with from whatever jobs I'd done before, we'd find a weekend that works really well, and they were kind enough to like work for free because it's easy to work for free if it's only a couple days, right? Much harder on a feature. So find a weekend that works for everyone and do the whole shoot fully sponsored, get fully sponsored gear from Media or Panavision. They're always super, super supportive. And the cost that I would always have to cover personally, that I could never get away from, would be insurance, because it's super irresponsible to do any shoot without insuring your cast and crew, especially if they're not getting paid. And if you're asking them to do anything, like even if you don't think it's a risk, trust me, it is. And that's like, I've been really lucky to never have any incident, but if you did, you'd be like, there's liabilities at play. But the insurers are really supportive. Gib are wonderful. They'll often do a deal, like a no claim, no pay deal, if you are really lucky, or it'll be a very minimal amount for a no budget shoot. So I would always pay that insurance amount out of pocket. It would be a couple $1,000. And catering, because even if you get sponsorships on food, which we always do, but it's a hustle. I mean, like, there's a reason that I don't work for a couple months to produce. Takes that much time and energy to put all the sponsorships together, go to all the gear houses, equipment houses, all the crew, casting, whatever. It's a lot of time to get that right at the level of production you want it to be at, and advocate. And that's like, you're not getting paid, you're just doing it to give yourself the opportunity to do what you want to do, right? So taking all that time, investing in yourself, investing in your vision, to then have a product to show to the world, to say, see, I can do this. And I think the big takeaway there is that you'll probably have to do that for a good couple of years before you'll get a break. And you have to want it and love it that much, or it might not be worth it to you, because you're constantly sacrificing whatever you earn on any job. You're not saving, you're reinvesting that into yourself professionally in order to create the work to show off and build your CV. If you're pursuing directing specifically, it's a little different in other departments. But I think that sort of broadly covers in broad strokes how I got here. I have a lot of people to thank, a lot of people that were willing to believe in me after watching over the years all of these, projects that I put together just to show as a platform for what I could do. And when you get here and you finally get to the point where it starts to pay off, you're just so bloody grateful that it wasn't all for nothing. And you have a lot of people behind you to thank for every single person who worked for free on one of your shoots over the years. For example, all of these people make that possible. So never discount the importance of your team and finding your people, because no film can be made. It's a miracle any film is made, and it's the team coming together that makes that possible. I hope this was helpful or useful in any way, and enjoy the festival.